In 1976, the Viking landers on Mars were carrying experiments designed by Dr. Gilbert Levin. They took soil samples and tested for biological activity. The soil on Mars was shown to be metabolizing nutrients and releasing carbon dioxide gas with a radioactive marker. But subsequently, NASA refused to accept this as evidence of biological activity in Martian soil. This video will be attempting to show evidence of something that looks like macrobiology on the Martian surface, and the findings are quite remarkable in their scope. I hope you will enjoy the material that follows, and I hope that it is something towards the actual vindication of the remarkably elegant experiments designed by Dr. Levin. There are just a few images at the beginning of this show which are intended as a recap of work that's been done earlier, and then the main body of the show today is about what you can see from the high resolution cameras that NASA have put around Mars, and how the images from high up in space relate to the images on the ground being sent back by Curiosity Rover. Today we are going to be looking at Mars from outside of the planet. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has a science experiment called the Highrise imaging camera, and I want to show you the relationship between what you can see from space and what Curiosity Rover is showing us on the ground. Now you should be looking down at a mesa from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and we've got some lovely images. But when you start to look at these images, NASA tells us we're seeing permafrost with fissures. But look closely, look into the fissures, and you see these very familiar white spheres with the black dot in the middle. Now, as we zoom down into the crevasses and fissures of a mesa seen from above, we realise that there's all sorts of interesting structure there, these ridges and furrows. What I want to show is that as we get up closer to those, they also are formed by rows and rows of these white orb-shaped subjects. Now, the story I'm trying to tell is that this is a component of the most phenomenal ecological system, something totally different from anything we have here on Earth. These little creatures, because I'm sure they are biology, start very small on the ground, and you get these huge swelling structures. And when I say huge, I'm suggesting here maybe a structure a kilometre across, a big dome. But I think they can be much bigger. It's almost like looking at mountain ranges made of biology. Now what I'm showing you here in this little diagram is my first attempts to systematise what I'm seeing. The domes of these organisms expand, and eventually they split, creating all these fissures. And when we look down into the fissures, there, sure enough, inside are just an unbelievable a number of these subjects. I'm showing you now inside a fissure. We're sort of panning along a fissure, and I want you to look into the fissure, and the same things that we see on the surface of Mars, the same things that we see which make up the structure of lots of the odd rocks and artifacts of Mars, are also there, visible from space. This is so astonishing that I can hardly find the words to explain how incredible this is. Now, these white spheres with the black circles in them, they can be any size. It seems, as far as I can tell, from microscopic all the way up to the ones I'm showing you at the top of the mesa here, which are probably several meters across. I've managed to get some nice close-ups. They're a little out of focus, and that's because of the technology I have access to. It might be something to do with the images that we're being supplied with. I'm sure that NASA or the people analysing these pictures know all about this. Now, we were just looking at some really nice subjects. When you look at the surface of anything in Mars, once you begin to tune in and get your eye in, you begin to realise that these orbs, I like to call them orbiforms, you start finding them everywhere. And here again, there's some sort of nice examples. You have to play sometimes with the colour, the contrast, and the brightness of the images from NASA to be able to see what's going on in their pictures. One thing I learned recently from somebody called Joe from Art Alien TV, it was explaining how to work with the photos from NASA. The ones that we receive are very compressed. If you expand the images, maybe anything up to 10 times, you actually begin to see the true contents of the pictures. Again, looking down onto the surface of Mars. And I'm interested now in these ridges that make those interesting patterns in the Highrise pictures. Those ridges too are just made up of rows and rows of these orbiforms. And here again we can also look into crevasses, and we see that just below the surface of those splitting surface of the mesa is just full of countless millions of these orbiforms. It's a nice monochrome shot as well, just to take the colour out for a moment and try and get some more detail and some more clarity in the image. But you can see here quite nice examples again of the orbiforms just inside a crevasse. And now something different. We're back on the surface of Mars. Curiosity is taking pictures of the ground, and we get a few pictures like this. It's soil. I don't know if the soil was disturbed by the Curiosity rover, or whether in fact this is something spontaneously occurring on the surface of Mars, but we get this sort of putty coloured earth or soil. But it's interesting because once again, when you really magnify this image of the soil, lo and behold, you start seeing it's made up of countless little orbiforms. Here they are. Maybe you have to concentrate a bit. The size varies, but this is that soil sample. Obviously the colour's been taken away, and I've expanded the brightness and contrast. And notice the speckling here as well. All these pictures that are coming back from the Martian surface have this speckly look. And you get this strange banding effect. And it's just because there are countless little speckles. And the speckles are the dark eyes or lenses or patches on the orbiforms. Images from Mars have something odd about them, and it's only when you look at them like this you begin to realise that this oddness it's not artefacts caused by the photography, but these speckling banding effects caused by countless millions of these little subjects, these little orbiforms, or with a little black dot in the middle. This is it's almost unbelievable, because it's an ecological system which is totally different from anything we've seen before. Now, I had intended to finish the video show just there, but I've looking around like you do, and I decided to investigate Martian meteorites. I remember in 1986 a team believed they'd found life in a Martian meteorite recovered from Antarctica in 1984. And then I started to discover that there were a number of meteorites that had been photographed and shown to the public, and I could not believe my eyes. The first object here was printed, this photograph was printed in the Guardian newspaper in the UK, and it shows a meteorite from Mars that's been cut in half, I guess. It's got a section through it. And, well, I'd ask you to look and make your own assessment of the images I'm showing you of it. But as far as I can see, the orbiforms have travelled to Earth in a Martian meteorite. And finally, the famous image from 1986, it's the meteorite that was found in Antarctica in 84, and all I can say is that when those biologists believe that they found evidence of life, I think the answer has to be yes, they did. Or certainly what they had in their hands was a fragment of Martian biology. This was interpreted, I think, as possibly crystalline structures formed naturally on the surface of Mars. But if you take into account the orbiform ecological system on Mars, it seems that even at a microscopic level you can find the same structures that you find when you look from the Martian orbiters gazing down on top of the mesas from out in space. If you know any astrobiologists, biologists, or anybody who's working in this field, please ask them to have a look at this material. And I'm not going to do any more zooming in. I'm sure you've had your belly full of that by now. But please go and find these images for yourself and continue the investigation. I've not invented anything here. I've merely tried to interpret the things that I can see. And perhaps I've made mistakes or assumptions beyond the material. That's for you to judge. And thank you for watching this video.